right. Welcome, everybody. We're here for an off-season episode of Peach Pit. We have some fun, interesting, exciting content to get into, especially with some recent announcements about adding South Carolina to the Peachtree District. We're going to talk a little bit about what this means for teams from both Georgia and South Carolina. And we've got some other PCH news to mention later on. But before we get started, I'll make the usual disclaimer that any views or opinions shared on this show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team first, Georgia first, South Carolina first, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind this show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. We'll kick things off with some host introductions for the folks we have on tonight. I'll start with I'm Kellen Hill. I'm the lead mentor for Team Auto 1746.
I'm Thomas Priego. I'm a scouting mentor for Team 1746.
I'm Brian Carlson, a strategy mentor for Ignite Robotics 6829.
And hello from South Carolina. I'm David Allred, coach of Robots Garage Team 4451 out of Lawrence, South Carolina.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here, David. Obviously, as the landscapes are changing, we're happy to have some input here from South Carolina just to make sure we're including those perspectives, especially with all the South Carolina teams joining districts, getting familiar with how things work. We're excited to have you here to include South Carolina in all the nonsense we wind up talking about.
I'll just add more nonsense, I guess.
Come on down.
Come on down.
But to get things started, if you haven't heard for whatever reason, if you've been living under a rock, we've got the awesome news to share that South Carolina is joining the Peachtree District for the 2023 season. This is interesting news. Georgia's obviously been its own self-contained district since 2016. So Georgia teams have been in districts for 6 full seasons now. Have gotten a lot of experience. I think it'll be interesting for us to kind of share advice, just because we've been in districts so long. It's hard to remember, what was our mindset when districts first started, and what were the learning curves that we went through. But some of those other details about the South Carolina joining, just for a couple of quick details. These are ballpark numbers, I think, that would be jumping from about 63 Georgia teams in Peachtree District last year to somewhere around 100 teams for 2023, mashing together Georgia's and South Carolina's numbers. Georgia First also did an announcement recently, or a call to release some of the details involved in the district mashup. That then included event details. So we'll be jumping from 4 district events from Peachtree last year to 7 total events in 2023, which is pretty exciting to have that many additional options on events to go to and obviously teams to play with. So what's everybody's initial reactions to the exciting news?
I think I speak for everyone. I'm very excited to make some new friends. But I'm also a little concerned. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. There's a couple things that I would have hoped First would have answered more. And in discussions with several other mentors in the PCH district, there are concerns about the competitive balance of things, and then the overall quality of events and how this merge will impact both of those.
All right. So what do you mean by that? I mean, I'm like, are you talking about the other regional teams having less to go to, or what?
I'm more specifically speaking about how first I'll just tackle the district event quality issue. Georgia First has by far, if you at least watch the web feed of every other event or attend any other has shown itself as one of the best at organizing and planning and putting on events. I personally speaking, I believe that they're probably the best district at hosting events and having a really high quality show. So any concern over how that will play out with these extra events and then a couple events happening well outside of the scope that of Georgia First control. The second thing, and when I say competitive balance, is the I don't the number of Georgia teams that I see going outside of the Georgia events to like a South Carolina events. I don't really see that number being quite high, and then most of the powerhouse teams are going to try and stay in Georgia and stay in their local Atlanta area. So these are two more that they're going to be weaker district events when traditionally there's only one, maybe two events, like in Albany or something that doesn't really have that many high-powered teams. Adding these two events where there's going to be little to no high-powered teams in attendance can lead to some weird district point distributions
Okay.
where
Yeah.
teams that would have easily made states end up being on the bubble. Teams that would have been on the bubble end up getting bumped off, and teams that wouldn't really have made it there end up getting in just based on event selection.
Well, I think that's a short-lived thing. If you look at 2016, when we switched over to districts, there was, 2974 was really good, right? 1261, everyone's, every odd year they'd do well, right? There wasn't a lot of really strong teams. If you look at where we're at now, because of the fact we're getting 36 plays plus playoffs, right? I think a lot of that, you're going to see the South Carolina teams start getting a lot better because they're going to get more plays. I think only about 10 of the teams did 2 regionals, right? So the rest of them are just one and done. They haven't experienced a full build season. So I think those kind of lessons are going to carry over, and you're going to start seeing them be able to improve as the season goes on.
Yeah, let me throw in some. Yeah, that's a great point, Thomas. So I'm the historian. I've been around South Carolina since 2009, so I've been at this a while, and I know the landscape very well, and I have previously played with Georgia teams, back in the day before districts. So the way I'm looking at this right now is South Carolina has a little bit of work to do because I think the districts have helped the Georgia teams quite a bit. I've watched y'all play. I do watch a lot of events, and so I think we have some competitive catching up to do. Now, from the standpoint of if our events are not as competitive and therefore we're making points that if more competitive teams were there, we wouldn't get them, right? And therefore, am I denying, a slot from a team that in Georgia that would have made it before? I don't think that's going to be an issue because, as I understand it, they're going to 50 teams, so about half the district will be going to district champs, and so the only thing you got to do is get in the top half. Yeah. But I do get your point. But when we get there to district champs, so the South Carolina teams, let's say they played up at Coker University, which is way in the northern part of South Carolina, up towards the Florence area. So if no Georgia teams come there and that's a fully South Carolina event, so some of those South Carolina teams will be present at PCH champs. Now what? Right. So if you can't compete, you've got to be able to compete at that level. Right. So, you might deny 1 or 2 teams, but I think that'd be a fringe case. Just my opinion.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
That, and I think the other comment Thomas brought up, I think, again, Georgia First does a fantastic job, but I think what's really reassuring about then South Carolina, because South Carolina will be running, and again, for anybody not aware, of the 7 total district events, 5 are being hosted in Georgia, 2 are being hosted in South Carolina. So Georgia First and South Carolina First are still their own entities.
Yes.
Within the PCH district. So each of those entities will be planning and organizing, running their individual events.
Right.
But what I think is really reassuring is that South Carolina has years and years and years of experience running the Palmetto Regional, and as of last year, the Electric City Regional. So
Right.
that experience set is there.
And I
but I think
appreciate
we're
the
going to
challenge, right? Because I'm on the planning committee. So thank you, Thomas, for the challenge to make our
Yeah.
events as good as yours. And I can't promise you I will, but I'm going to certainly do everything I can. Because as I was talking, we were talking before this call started, right? So in my experience, the team experience at an event is what we're trying to go for. And we did some pretty interesting stuff last year, and I think we've got some new ideas coming this year. I can't really say what they are, but we want to make sure that our events have a good team experience. Now, I'll say that's a promise from me. But
And I really enjoy it when planning committees and first as a whole winds up putting that experience at the forefront, because at the end of the day the teams are, in some weird sense, I don't know if it's direct correlation, but the teams are the customer, and
right.
you want to make sure the students are enjoying the experience and getting as much as they can out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I actually I like the size of 100. I'm hopeful. We'll see if this ever happens, right? But if we can get to like 120 and get 60 at I can't say states, at district champs, right? That we can do something like a Michigan and actually run 2 30-team divisions, right? Because that way then you win your division, you have the Einstein final kind of thing. I think I understand Georgia does a great job, but I think Michigan's district championship with having ESPN coverage and all the commentators does some great production. And I'd love to, with our size, be able to look at trying to get to that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. That would be cool.
Let's think about it.
What, the peach and the pit divisions? We have to come. We can come up.
Yeah, because if you do 60 and you do two 30-team events, right?
Right.
You're going to have 48 of the 60 going to playoffs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the best of the, you might have a stronger 3 bot if you do one playoffs, but you get more engagement and you get a more, what some people have talked about since 2016, a super regional feel, right?
I don't know if going to 2 30-team regionals seems,
Well, yeah,
or 32-team
divisions, yeah.
30-team divisions isn't necessarily good thing to do, just because then you end up having only 4 teams, 2 per division as backup bots, and that don't get to play. So I just know from experiences at playing events where there was 0 extra teams or only 1 extra team, that can lead to, at least if you're the team that's left out, you end up being pretty bummed. And then also if you're one of the teams that's in, it just becomes very, very, it being district champs, this doesn't really become a big of an issue, but of like, okay, who's left? And it just becomes a lot harder challenge to build a rounded out alliance.
Yeah, I think some target there would be to keep expanding. I like the idea of the PCH district, or a southeast region district, continuing to expand to build more into that model. So yeah, at 60 teams is a bit limited, especially when you have 120 teams in your district. But I think it's all part of any expansion progress that FIRST is looking into, that hope either for absorbing or melding together within either North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, just to then create any more of a Southeast region championship. I think that would be the show that Brian's kind of talking about.
Yeah.
Just build the what the SEC is for football, just build it again for robotics.
Yes. So Kyle can't make it tonight. He's at a Braves game. But yes, Kyle, we're working on the SEC district, right?
We got you covered, Kyle. Yes.
Okay.
But I guess what are some other thoughts, I guess, on the merger, or winds up being, what does this mean for the teams in both South Carolina and Georgia? And one of those things is that we have then more events to choose from and more teams to compete with. I know it was a comment by any number of Georgia teams in 2016 that they didn't like going to districts strictly because they didn't get it wasn't as easy to play with teams from out of the district anymore. So I think one of the awesome side effects of this is that we get some new teams to play with, some new friends to make on different teams. What else might it mean for teams from both South Carolina and Georgia, and getting familiar with playing in a district with new teams or starting to play in districts to begin with?
Let me ask you guys a question about that experience then, right? So, we don't know what we don't know, right? So, but like I said, I'm kind of a historian here, and typically 60% of the South Carolina teams have been one and done, right? They either, they play Palmetto or the ECR, and that's it, right? And so this obviously with one entry fee gives you the opportunity to play 2 events. So when that happened in Georgia, was that like an instantaneous? Everybody did the 2 events, and did they complain about it because they weren't used to it? I mean, what happened there, just with that one subject?
So the first year we're in, especially since we didn't know, there are a lot of the rules are a little different than they are now, right? There was a bag, so with the bag, a lot of teams were doing a 3rd event outside the district to get more time and more practice, and so you saw a lot more 3. A lot of I'd say the top quarter would consider going out of state just to do that. But with no bag, everybody's dropping to just 2. It's really fun. We really get a chance to know everybody. And at Albany, for example, our limelight was theoretically broken. We weren't sure. And so I'm like, hey, Kellen, right? I know, we know each other. I'm like, you have a spare limelight, but Techno Titans 1683. They came over and like, hey, I hear you need a limelight, right? And so that kind of stuff, you don't get to build those relationships, and teams become closer. You start seeing them more often, and the students, get better friendships, and mentors get better friendships, and the teams get better. I just really love the district model.
Okay.
And I think a little bit of the question there is how did those teams that were one and dones transition into? I think there may have been a couple of cases where teams were like, oh, we're just going to do one and call it the end of our season and be done with. But on any given season, that number is really just the 1 or 2 teams out of what I think Georgia got up to 86 teams at one point. But yeah, it was only ever a couple of teams, if that, and because of any particular situation. But on the whole, there was a really, really quick adoption of embracing districts.
Right.
So
our team has historically done 2 regionals, so that's not a big deal to me. But for the teams that were one and done, I've never actually talked to them about that. And would they just automatically say, well, since I just have to travel, and so we'll do the second one?
So there's one more part that really, especially like I know 148 mentioned this when they switched over to districts, and it shocked them. The amount of wear that you put in your bots, because previously, if you do 2 regionals, right, you did 12, was it 8 or 10?
Depending on the size of the regional, it could be as little as 8 qualifying matches.
So you get about 20 qualifying matches, and then let's say you do 3 for each of your rounds, you're going to get around 30 to 35 matches. You're going to be getting closer to 60 doing this. And 4910 ECR, before they folded up last season, they actually, before they would go to the States, they were replacing bearings on their drivetrain and then doing it again before Worlds, just because there's a lot more wear in your bot. A lot more things will go wrong. And so if you don't know where your failure points are, you'll find them out.
Right. So for instance, our team doesn't do a practice spot. Well, we've done, like in our 10-year history, we've done 2, right? We just don't have a lot of time to build a second robot. Got to finish one. So what are those pro tips out there to help teams transition to those number of matches? Is it just replace your bearings, replace your gears? You got any other ideas?
during the design process, it's largely focusing on what are the things that are going to wear out and wear down, and make sure you're ordering those ahead of time. For like if you're using Colson's,
Mhm.
those are eventually going to flatten out or wear out,
You
wear
wore out a
down.
Coulson? Wow.
Yes.
Yeah,
Impressive.
yeah,
Oh
exactly.
my
So,
gosh.
so
I didn't think anything would
thi-
wear down a Coulson.
yeah, think ahead on what that wear and tear is going to be on your robot, and have a servicing plan built around that wear and tear.
Yeah.
And then
It,
a big
go on.
thing is you got to be, because everybody's getting a lot of plays, there ends up being this weird dynamic where teams start playing differently because they're in the district and the district points matter. So there ends up being to be a robust level of defense that you normally wouldn't see until elims. You see that in quals. So the old adage or joke of like, yeah, we drove our robot full speed into a brick wall and to make sure nothing breaks. You probably should actually do that, just because there have been teams where their robot frame has just been bent. I
Yeah.
know in 2017 on auto we bent our robot and in 2016
Wow.
of like throughout the season our just robot frame got more and more bent throughout the year.
Wow. So why that's an interesting I would have never thought of that. So why would teams and districts want to play more defense to get district points? Are they just
I
trying
think
for the
it's
wins in the qualification matches to get the points for the
I think it's a side
qualification?
effect of playing more events with less teams at them, that in order to get recognized by. So if you realize like
Oh,
you plan to play offense, but obviously the offense things aren't working, that hey, maybe I can get picked as a defense
playoff
robot.
points.
Yep.
Yeah, that
Ah,
that light bulb turns on a little
Yeah.
sooner, I think,
okay.
at
Well,
district events.
yeah, because what
I never
happens
thought of
is,
that. Great point.
if you at a regional, there's winning, and then there's nothing else, right? There's no value in other positions. Where being picked as the D bot on the number four alliance versus number one alliance is 4 more points for district points for them to go to states, right? So you start playing the ranking game, and as a matter of fact, another thing, as far as in the alliance selection and stuff, um, you know, maybe you decline a pick so you stay on the opposite side of the 1 seed so you can get to the semifinals and get more district points, right? So there's a bunch of
Okay.
strategy stuff that you can do
Oh.
there. So there's meta to the meta.
Yeah, I've been used to playing the rank point game, right? To
Yeah.
get in the right position to pick to win because it's win or go home, right?
Yep.
In the
So it's
regional,
it's a
which is
very
a lot of
comparable
pressure.
game to playing the district instead of playing the event. So understanding how then wild cards wind up being assigned is
Yeah.
so having that mental understanding of how things are going to shake out per event is a big deal. But in districts, it all adds up throughout the season.
Yeah.
So
So back when we were around 80, and this is back when we had two champs, right? So we were sending 16. Um, you get points for your ranking at the end of quals, and that's based on the number of teams. And then you get points. Alliance captains get 16 through 8, right? And then first picks get 16 all the way down. So it turns out if you're we started doing the math on district points, that if you sort of ranked in the top 10 and you were basically on a top 4 alliance as a captain or
Okay.
first pick,
Okay.
and you made it to the semifinals,
Okay.
you got an award. That's
Okay.
5 points, right? All these other awards that like they may not have value in regionals are very valuable at a district model. So you get about 45, right around 45 points. If you make it to the finals and lose, you get usually around 60.
Mhm.
And if you make it to the finals and win, you get about 70, right? So you
Okay.
needed around 200 points, but the points at states are tripled. So if you did 45 and 45, you're at 90.
Okay.
Right. And now you're like, okay, well, if I do 45 again and that's tripled,
Okay.
then that can get me over the 200.
Gotcha.
Right. But now that means being on the top 4, the top 4 alliances, getting the quarterfinals. And so you start planning that thing out. And that's why one of the things that Thomas mentioned was the district points, even though they which competition you go to, and there are teams in Georgia that have gone to other competitions because they can maybe rank a little higher and get a few more points, maybe get a chairman's award, stuff like that. So those kind of things really do play in, and it's a small detail things that when you're trying to get a world slot are going to be really important.
That's great insight. Thank you for that, because I just don't think that way, right?
Yeah.
That's not.
And then a big strategy that emerged in the past, it's not really a thing now because the safety award doesn't offer any district points, but teams became that became an award to chase because that was the only award that you could win that and then another award at the event. So you could potentially get, so you
Double
just have to,
award points.
yeah. So you got to be min-maxing a lot of stuff just to make sure and playing the game. Teams, there are plenty of teams that they'll just go, okay, the way I make it to states and make it to worlds isn't by being the best robot here. I'm going to build a robot that guarantees ranking points and just be the first seed at every district event I go to and just rack up those points.
Right.
So
from that perspective, it's similar, right? So if you get top 4 rank, you're going to be a top 4 captain, get a lot of points, win an award, you're in decent shape. But if you're trying to wedge your way in there, you're trying to make it all the way to the semis.
Yep.
Essentially.
Yep.
On the top 4 lines.
Yeah.
Okay,
and the thing is,
there, South Carolina.
Yeah. The thing is,
listen close.
You're playing a season, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about, when Ignite last year, when we were looking at what we were going to do, like we usually had certain things that we wanted to do during a normal competition. Last year, because of the limited number of spots being 1 champs, I'm like, it doesn't make a difference if we win our first competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because states are going to, we're going to have the winning alliance plus 2 point winners, right? Well, the 2 point winners, if you're on the losing alliance in finals, they get a bunch of points, right? So that means the captain and first pick, which means you got to be one of the top 4 bots in Georgia. And that was the important thing.
And
right?
for example, Team 8736, the Mechanisms, won their first 2 district events as the first pick. So they, going into states, they were the number 1 ranked team in the district. They missed out on worlds by like 3 or 4 teams. Just because of how heavily weighted, because they lost in quarters at states.
Oh, they lost in quarters at states.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So they would have had to make it to like finals or semifinals.
They would have had to make it to finals.
They'd had to make it to at least finals.
Right.
And then another thing that ends up happening is because there are things that automatically qualify you, you end up playing an interesting game where, say you're a team that would have qualified based on points already, right? If you win an award like chairman's, then the next team down that would have qualified of points gets the gig. Yeah. So there becomes a weird situation where if you're on the outside looking in at states, you're looking at, okay, if this team wins chairman's, that bumps down a slot. If this team wins rookie all-star, it bumps down a slot. So it really just becomes a the awards, every award matters. Every winner matters.
We've been there in many situations, sitting there during the award ceremony, checking off, all right, who's in front of us, who's behind us, who's moving up as a result of winning an award. Did we just bump in or did we bump up?
I don't have this many fingers and toes.
Oh yeah.
So, exactly. So it's
at Dalton, when we got an award, I'm like, yes, we need that.
You need the points.
Yeah.
Interesting game.
At district champs, for instance, we wound up being the captain for the 5th seed alliance, but we wound up being locked in there. But if we had the opportunity to accept an invitation, our call was largely based on if it would put us on the opposite side of the bracket of 1771, we would have said
you
yes.
could at least make finals.
Exactly. And it was all about district points. We didn't we might get a stronger partner, but we're going to lose against 1771 earlier.
Right.
So let's instead try to get on the opposite side of the bracket.
Right.
But
I have done the opposite side of the bracket strategy to win a regional, because to win a regional, you got to make it to the finals, right? So, at least to have a shot, right? You got to make the finals. How do you get to the finals? So, or, back in the days of two champs where you had the opportunity to maybe get a wild card as the, finalist captain, that was a nice thing to do. So I played that game before.
Yeah, it's a very similar mentality, just for chasing the right things. But for all the, I guess, South Carolina teams listening to this, and any newer Georgia team, take a chance, wander through the 2022 game manual on how that district point model winds up working, because we've discussed some of the details of it here, but it's good to get familiar with it. That doesn't mean I'll always offer the way out of saying that doesn't guarantee by any means that this upcoming season is going to work similar to past seasons. But it's good to familiarize yourself with the model and how it has worked in the past, so you can best manipulate it.
And I have one caveat: don't read the rule on how to calculate your district points based on your ranking and qualification. It's a
formula is nasty.
It's a very, just go to Blue Alliance, pick it, go to any past event on a PCH, right? And look at the rankings and sort them by ranking. You'll see how many district points they get, and you'll get a feel for how many are there.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Yes.
Don't worry about all the math.
That, and you can be sitting at an event, and as the event is going on, as teams are going up and down on the rankings at the event, you can open up the Blue Alliance, and it's actively updating with the district of points there.
With the whole
if it were to end that day, where people would be at.
That's nice.
Yeah, so the Blue Alliance ends up becoming your best friend and your worst enemy. Just sitting there, watch yourself slowly but surely move down. And the funnest part is, though it auto updates as matches complete during the award ceremony, it doesn't, because all the awards are put in at the same time at the end of the event. So that's where you take your snapshot at the end of each round. Yes. Each round in elims gives you, I believe it's 5 points per match win, but you only get those points if you advance to the next round. The reason why they separate it per match is just in case a backup bot gets called in. But it's 5 points, so it's effectively 10 points per round. So you can generally go and look at, okay, these are all the points, and then do your mental math of, this is what I need to do. This is where teams are going to end up. It becomes awards at states is probably the most stressful, unless you're in a position where you're going because you were in the finals or you won the event. It just becomes a very, very, you can look around and just look as people get really excited because they got bumped in, and then deflated because they got bumped out.
Because of an award.
At 2018 at states, we were on the bubble of going to Worlds or not, and we got an award, and we're like, oh yeah, we got bumped in, we'll make it as long as these 3 teams don't win an award. As long as one of those 3 teams doesn't, so 2 of 3 we're in, 1 of 3 we're in, but 3 of 3 we're the first team out. And then you're just sitting there, you're watching 832 wins an award. And you're just sitting there, okay, I got 2 more teams that can, only 1 more team can, and then you just watch, and it's, so that just becomes an aspect of, you can watch teams of, oh, I won an award too early, becomes a thing as well.
Yeah. In 2019,
for the record, we wound up being the first team out, and it was
by 5 district points.
So in 2019, we went actually made it to Worlds, but we went into state. When we went into championships, we were we had some bad matches and a bad schedule, so we ranked fairly low. We were down in the 30s, but everybody was like, "Yeah, we're going to pick you, right?" So we knew we had a good bot, and I'm like, where we're at, I'm like, well, how are we going to do here? And it's like, oh, if I can get picked by the 7 seed versus the 8 seed, and try, all these different things, try to get extra points. And I'm like, we're at 205. I'm like, And the teams are going to be in there just like Otto, right? We're going to know how many points that we have, and Blue Alliance isn't going to be up to date, but you're going to be like, okay, all right. I'm like, I think we're in. We'll see, right?
Yeah, we ended up having in 2019 a mentor build out a Giga Excel
Oh,
sheet
okay. Yeah.
of just scenarios of okay, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. What are the probabilities of us making to worlds under these situations? It,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
becomes a very and this wasn't necessarily a thing the first year we were in districts, but as teams grew into districts and became a more we're a lot more
Right.
cognizant of it.
Yeah.
What's going on? Right.
The district kind of grew together. So the one thing I'd say for South Carolina teams is these Georgia teams have what 5 years, 6 years of
You have experience.
knowing how to play the system.
Yeah.
If you're a low resource team and you want to make it to states and have your best shot of making it to worlds, build a bot that can do nothing except farm. Thinking of teams that have done really well and made it to worlds. I think it was 6919 in 2019. Their robot could do like the bottom level, but they climbed every single time and guaranteed that the third level climb RP. So
Right.
they were first seeded like their 2 district events.
Mhm.
They won their first district event, and like through just sheer force of we do nothing except climb and do these very other little things, they were able, like same with 4020 Global Dynamics 4026 that same year, they were able to just play we climb and we play defense, and then they made it to worlds.
Yeah.
Well, and to point out another role player, I think there was an instance again for 2019 where I think it was Wildcats for 24-15 at the Forsyth District event, which was, I believe, the last one of the year. That I don't think they had qualified for state champs, but due to being the third robot on the winning alliance of that event, wound up getting enough district points to qualify for state champs.
Yep.
Situationally, they wound up being the third robot on the number 1 seed alliance at state champs, and therefore qualified for world
Worlds.
champs. So it's
Right.
just the escalation of what can happen there. It can happen very quickly. So it's
And rookie teams in 2019, the captain of the number 8 alliance was a second year team, Eve Robotics, right?
No, they were
Mhm.
a first year team that year.
Their first year.
They had the 10 extra points. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So a rookie was actually the captain of the alliance, and they picked us when we were a second year team, right? So with all the time you get to play, you can definitely see performance improving in teams a lot quicker than it would be in a regional system.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing to take into account, I don't know how it'll work with a lot of the South Carolina teams joining. Like when Georgia went districts, it stayed like the teams that were already around. But rookies, if it's your first year, you get an automatic 10 extra district points.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
People in their second year get 5 extra district points.
Yep.
So
Right.
there's like a running joke amongst some mentors of, I'm just going to reform a team every year, so I just continuously get these 10 extra points.
They fixed that loophole.
Yeah, they
They-
fixed that
yeah, they
loophole
fixed the
for that
loophole.
exact reason. But like, it is another thing you need to keep into account of, oh, this team has extra. Like, for example, like 8736 and 1771. 1771 was the first seed at all of their district events, and then they'd first pick 8736. 8736 was the number 1 team in the district because they got those 10 extra points. So that's just another thing that can help you or end up scorning you if you're on the other end of it.
Yeah.
Good. Go ahead.
Another topic I think for those again more so directed at South Carolina teams winds up being getting familiar with playing at smaller events. I think South Carolina teams got. I think a lot of teams get this experience at like off-season events that you get that smaller feel for an event. But I believe Electric City otherwise would have been the smallest regular season event a lot of South Carolina teams would have attended.
in quite a while.
And that was still 38 teams, which is larger, I think, than any PCH District event for a while at least. But getting familiar with playing at small events and any advice we can come up around that notion. But one of my key things there winds up being that
time is brutal.
yeah, turnaround time. So number one, you're playing more matches. Number two, you're playing with less teams. So therefore, you're in several situations over the years, we've gone to the events with 26 teams. That you wind up having maybe a match or two off, and then you're right back on the field. So practicing that routine for changing out your battery, resetting your robot, having your pit crew very practiced at maintaining your robot in a speedy situation is very important.
Mhm.
But to the note of playing with a smaller event, if you only have 26 teams at an event, which I think we might be keyed up for this upcoming year with there being 7 events that we might wind up with some of those smaller events, is that by the time you're picking in the second round, the pool of teams you're picking from is much smaller. So you have to it really emphasize the importance of scouting and knowing all of the teams at the event and knowing which teams are, one or two things away from actually driving around well or getting autonomous tuned just right to actually score some points. So knowing those nitty gritty details about all of the teams at the event, because you might very well have to pick them,
Right.
Yep.
is important.
Definitely recommend how normally teams, what they do is they like pit scout at the start of the event, and then just don't do it again. Of pit scout at the beginning of the second day, going right before alliance selection, and get things and information like, okay, I see that you haven't really driven for, like, what are the things, like, what have you guys diagnosed as the issue to that? And then having a list of potential fixes that you can help them with in quals so they can start driving. And then also, if you end up having to pick a team that hasn't driven yet, a list of solutions of, okay, we've picked you, this is what we're going to do in order to, like, help you get going. And because there's definitely been situations where I think like Albany this year, the teams that were left once you were when we were sitting in the stands, we were like, oh my, like the scouting margin for error becomes that everybody ends up having the same list, because the list doesn't become of, oh, this team scored one more point than the other. The list becomes, oh, this team drove in more matches than these other guys. So you have to be prepared for that. And then the biggest thing is at regionals, I don't know how this was for South Carolina, but you typically have like that practice day, and then you have access to a full whether it's like a full practice field or half practice field. You're not going to get that. You're probably going to get a little corner of the venue where they have one, maybe two of the major field elements, and then only 2 teams can be there at a time, maybe 3 if all 3 of you are doing different things.
Yeah, I was going to ask about those 2 things. Practice, right? So practice day is going to be a shock and awe for South Carolina, right? They're used to a practice day. They show up. They might not be completely ready, but teams will come and help you get ready, right? So you're missing this, or you need some help with some code, and so we got all day. That's gone, right?
Yeah.
Let's just stick with that one topic. What kind of advice do you have for us for that particular topic?
What I would say is it's very common at first events for especially week 1, to have 2 to 4 bots have to miss a few matches.
Dog, dude, I've been to events where it's 15.
Right.
It's very optimistic.
Right. So, where before you had a day to get working, right? And if you had problems, you can get help. That morning, everybody's trying to get their bots inspected, and so it's harder to get the help that you need, like you would have at a full day time at a regional. So just be prepared that you need to be ready beforehand and be driving beforehand, and not thinking you're going to be doing stuff at the competition to make it operational. You can improvement, sure, right, but it should be operational.
And then take advantage of that half load-in day you get. They're on the day, like the first day of matches, the line to get inspected ends up being massive. So if you can at least start the inspection process the day before, is a really big thing. Try and grab as much time as possible. I know they said during the planning call that they might do practice matches if the field is ready. The field's never going to be ready. like in every single district event that
Hot
I've
take.
been to, there has never been practice matches except at the district champs, which has that day built in.
Yeah,
So
there are some situations in which they'll have teams like roll the robot over to the field just to develop connectivity with it, just to
Connect
make
it.
sure that's functioning. So that's good that the crews are working on that.
and you
I
can
would like to
calibrate.
point out, based on Thomas's comment there, to any inspectors in the PCH district listening to this call, that we are actively advocating for teams to get inspected as early as possible. I think we set a record for our team for this past season on doing
We're
that.
the first team inspected at more than one event, which is a first for us because we were typically the last team inspected at
Okay.
a lot of events.
Yeah. So the advice is, so back when districts started for Peachtree, it was a situation where bags were still around, and that the week of your district event, you got, what was it, 6 hours of unbag
Yeah,
time?
of unbag, yeah.
Yeah. So teams were then actively using those to either keep working on the robot or actually doing any drive practice, stuff like that. But once bags got taken away, I think I don't know, the problem's almost there, that teams are like, well, now the deadline is just the first day of
You
the
just
event.
slid out the
Well-
deadline. They don't feel like they're in pressure anymore.
Well,
So that's something we intentionally try setting, as we still try holding the 6-week deadline for our team, just to make sure that the robot's done and functional to some degree, and that we're working on improvements until our first event, just to make sure that we're putting in the effort to make sure we're event ready at about the same time the bag season would normally have us at, instead of just pushing the deadline of, all right, we just need to be ready the night before the event.
So I will say this: with the removal of the bag, right? It's actually changed how we pick our events. It used to be, because when you had a bag, you would get the 6 hours beforehand, so you only had 6 hours of time to work on your bot, and so it didn't matter what you would do. And so with no bag, you can build it anytime you want. So if you think about it, if you do a back-to-back weekend, right, you're going to spend a day or two recovering from that competition, and then you're going to spend a few days packing up, and you have basically no time in the middle, right? So if you do 2 weeks and you do, let's say, a 1, 3, 2, 4, something like that, you then have about a week of time in there, right? And if you did 1, 3, you have multiple weeks. But with bag, you just had, well, you did two competitions and you got 6 hours. And how you space those did not impact how much time you had to work on your robot.
Yeah.
So now you're spacing more to get the extra, like if you want to modify something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and then the big thing is, instead of it where I like in the regional, again, as a student, I've only ever done districts. My freshman year was the first year of districts in Georgia, so I don't really understand, and I never really experienced the regional model firsthand, where instead of where you would spend that extra time adding that one extra doohickey to your robot, spend that extra time doing drive practice.
Yes.
Where drive practice is infinitely more, is such a bigger thing here, because anything that can break will break. Like we said, you end up having to switch out bearings on things you never thought you'd have to switch out bearings for. I know for like a couple teams, you end up having to change like where you mount your limelight, because at the first competition you realized, oh, this limelight mount, if I fall the wrong way, I'm going to put all the weight of my robot onto the limelight.
Unless you took it off and gave it to another team
Unless you took it off and gave it to another team.
before that match.
Yeah.
See,
Thank
that's
you.
what you should have done, 1771, because just
Yeah.
So what happened was our limelight was defective. Otto wasn't using the limelight. They gave it to us. Their next match, they fell, and if it was limelight would have been on there, they would have lost it.
Yeah.
we
Oh,
would have
that
face
was
planted
good
right on the
sensitivity.
limelight.
So
We were offender shooters,
Right
so
where
we
the limelight
weren't using
was.
the limelight.
yeah,
Well, that was very kind of your drive team to do it that way.
Yeah.
So the other thing to think about is when you're in the district model, right? and talking about scouting, it's really it's scouting is more impactful because your three bot is going to be of a lower caliber than you will be in a 60 team regional, right?
Right.
So you're talking more about functionality,
Mhm.
and so that's why drive practice is really important because a pancake that can drive has a lot of value as a three bot,
Mhm.
but at a regional it has very little value, right? Because they're not going to be in the top 24 getting picked. Um, so be aware of that. The other thing is, and this is this, since you're going to have breakdowns, if you do week 5 and then do district champs week 6, you're going to finish up on a Sunday, and on Wednesday you have to get in, which means there's almost zero time to order parts. Have all your parts. If you had anything that's broken in the past, make sure you have backups, all those, because you're not going to be able to get them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and like battery management becomes a huge deal. If you don't have extra batteries already, buy them. Even if they're not for your own. I know like some of the big teams like Otto and Walton, and set like we always end up loaning out batteries to our third bots.
Yeah,
So
because you find out a team only brought two batteries to the event and have been
Oh,
scraping
two.
by on.
Ooh,
yeah,
Yeah, there's some
so
struggles out there.
have spares of everything.
drive
If you're
slow.
a
Drive
swerve
slow.
team, buy that where you're looking of we don't need to buy that extra module. We're never going to break our swerve modules. You are going to break your swerve modules. My team,
Yep.
or there was a team
Well,
that my team was playing, they went underneath another robot and speared
Yeah,
one of their very expensive
yeah,
swerve modules.
yeah.
So like have
mhm.
spares of
Hmm.
anything and everything. And if one of your and mentors, if one of your students goes, "Oh, that's not going to break," hit them upside the head and tell them, "Yes, it will."
Yes, it will.
I'm not
At the
that.
wrong time.
Yeah, like
Yep.
I lost in 2019. We lost state championships because a team accidentally plugged a battery directly into their VRM. Or no, not VRM, PCM.
Oh.
So,
Ooh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, like,
Ooh.
So
anything and everything is possible.
here's another one that I noticed last year, right? Um, at the beginning of the season, people are working on their bots at their pit because they're functional.
Mhm.
When we got to week 5, we had multiple teams working on their bot in queue for playoffs because the wear and tear
The
got to
wear
them.
and tear apart. And was
Yeah,
that mainly drivetrain wear and tear, intake wear and tear, the whole thing?
Everything.
Everything.
everything, right? So
Everything.
I know 4188 at Grits, when they reused their bot, they were doing stuff. We had problems at Grits in 2022. We were playing the 2020 game, right? Um, the wear and tear will get there, and understand how you could basically be mobile and fix in queue.
Yeah. Like
Yes.
for example, 1414 at Albany ended up falling apart just because the wear and tear got to them. Um,
Mhm.
and you can look back
Well,
and
all right. So
they
part of
also
that was
fell off the high
they
bar.
fell
So
Okay.
off the high,
Well,
right?
that's
yeah,
gonna hurt.
but
Right.
That'll leave a mark.
more than once. But it
Yeah.
you have to be prepared for such a thing. Like you're going to when your sample size increases 3-4 times, stuff you've never seen, like you might have seen if you made it to Einstein, if you're that one regional one and done, okay, we qualify for worlds, okay, we go to worlds, and like you maybe would have never seen just because your matches never got up there. You're going to see even if you don't make it to states because of how many matches you're playing. It is a brutal like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and because of the way the district model works, it's very forgiving if you have a rough first event, but then you figure things out. You you're not screwed. Especially now that we have what the 50 or so teams that we're expecting to go to states, you you can definitely rebound for that off that second event. Like 1102 in 2018, first event not so great, made a couple changes. Their last two events ended up winning their last
Mhm.
district event and their district and the district champs went to Worlds and had some fun. So like you're and at the same time, if you collapse, any cushion you have is never enough. Um, you want to get around 200 district points, especially with the amount of slots that are opening up with what they showed during this meeting of the 2 chairmans, 2 RAs, 2 EIs, and then the 3 winners. That's 9 spots taken by people with automatic bids. And so you're maybe getting 3, maybe 4 teams qualifying off of raw district points. So you're going to want to be. It's a collaborative thing. You want to help other people out as much as possible, but it is a cutthroat business of trying to make it to Worlds and stuff like that.
Well, and on that note, I think this leads perfectly into one of the next things we have queued up here, is that I think there's a general consensus, and I think this is something that's been an awesome side effect of transitioning to the district system, is that there's so much more of a community feel to it, that there's very much a consensus feeling among a lot of teams I've ever talked to, but that we as a Peachtree district want to be sending our best robots and our best teams to represent us at World Champs, to give us any shot of additional recognition as a stronger district in the first region. But I think that's a great side effect of the South Carolina and Georgia teaming up, is any of those additional slots for World Championships. Again, I think these are the allocations that were in the presentation, but they're by no means official until I think then first post them, just for how the districts wind up allocating any of those district champ or world champ slots they have per awards. But I'd be very curious, because so for the 68 teams we had this last season, Georgia had it, so we had 1 Impact Award winner, 2 EIs, and 1 Rookie All-Star. Right. So you had those 4 spots, 3 winners for 7 total slots, and then you had your any of those, the 3 remaining slots wound up being
just
district
on points. Right.
Yeah. So part of me is a little conflicted that by adding any amount of teams to the district, that any of those I'm a little bit torn on any too many of those slots being awarded based on winning an award, instead of winning enough cumulative district points throughout your season that demonstrate you're one of the stronger robots from the district, which I understand there's a lot of benefit to sending teams that win an award, like sending a rookie to a world champs just to have that eye-opening experience is huge. But at some point, I think there's still a lot of value in sending your top competitive teams. And I don't know if we're going to see more of that double dipping that I think we saw pre-2022, just for the amount of teams Georgia used to have, that more teams that were winning the Impact Award or the Engineering Inspiration Awards were also the teams winning the event. So they'd be double dipping and then open up one of those
open up more slots,
district
but based on points, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So we wound up being fortunate enough to win state championships in 2017, but other than that, we've been a district point qualifying team any other year in districts. Right. We've gone to world champs. So I don't know if this comes off as any amount of self-serving, but and again, I think this is a strong feeling among PCH teams, is that there's a general consensus that we want to be sending our strongest teams to go and compete at the world level. So if you looked at teams this last year that were either borderline or might not have qualified, to see like what Ignite was doing by state champs level for 14, how awesome their shot was. Yeah, 14-14. That we had any number of strong teams that were pulling off some awesome feats at state champs, but just didn't wind up getting there due to not having the district points. But again, I guess I'd be hoping with any additional qualification spots this upcoming season that we might see some more double dipping. Right. But I'd like to have some sense that we're sending our best teams to world champs.
And if you want some example of what we're speaking about, if you go to the Blue Alliance and look at the Peachtree District rankings for last check marks of qualified for DCMP and qualified for CMP. And
Right.
if you look at the teams that qualified for DCMP, there's a clump of like 5 at the top, which is the 2 teams that won the district champs. They're going to be at the top of the event no matter what, just because they got the 90 from their elims run. And then you have the 3 district point qualifiers. Those top 5 went to Worlds. And then there's a gap until the number 10th ranked team. They went to Worlds because they were an EI team. Then the 15th ranked team went as a chairman's team. The 21st ranked was Rookie All-Star. And then it ends up being very, very low. Like, you do want to, if you're not winning the event, you want to be winning the awards that get you there.
Yeah.
Those tend to be very forgiving.
And that's where I understand a lot of the value that comes with sending those teams winning those awards to world championships and how they're representing our district. Maybe not so much on the competitive front, but on the team culture front.
Yeah.
I just like to see any of the balance that comes with that, just to make sure that we're sending some of our better teams.
One of the things I'll say on that, since you look at it as a marathon and not a sprint, we chose a different design strategy this year versus the previous years, because previously we could look at getting one of the district point slots, not the winner slot. And there were so few this year in 2022. You had to be good enough to win to be able to be good enough to get one of those 2 extra slots. So before, we're like, we don't have to build a top 4 bot. We could just try to build a top 10 bot, right? And so it allows some teams that, for us to, winning districts is a strong battle, right? There are a lot of good teams, and there are more with our district expanding, right? So trying to say we're gonna win the district, even if you're one of the top 5 or 10 or 5 or so teams that are like the favorites to like look at them. Even in that group is, there's a lot of, they're very equal, and it's no guarantee you can win it, right? And so by having more district point slots, it allows some other teams to be able to sort of stretch and try to snag a world slot that way.
Right. So I think for the next 2 years, where they're having a single world event, right? It's 2, the next 2.
Yeah.
So proportionally, we'll expand because of the South Carolina edition. Maybe we get 3 or 4 extra teams. And depending on what kind of cultural world mix they add in there, if you had like 3 qualifying points, you might get 5 or 6 now. You think I'm in the right ballpark?
Yeah, so I think I crunched the numbers that based off of if the merge had happened for 2022, that I think instead of 10 qualification spots just for Georgia, that Georgia and South Carolina together would have had 14.
Right.
So depending on how we grow proportionally or compared to any other region, say we have 10% expansion, whereas others have less, that might. So right now we have a projected 14 spots for world champs, but that's assuming that world champs is going to be the same amount of teams for the upcoming year. I know they've announced it's single champs,
right,
just in Houston, but then there's any question of if there's going to be any more teams invited. So that's another possibility out there. But yeah, otherwise the numbers eyeballed right now is 14, but has any possibility if we have any additional team growth that we could bump up to maybe 15 or 16.
Okay, so here's I think a few things I'd like to summarize for the South Carolina teams out there listening. The teams that were, like one and done, you now get the opportunity to play 2 more matches and a higher probability that you're in the playoffs, way higher. Right. So just the number of matches. Now that's the good side of it. The concerning side of it is robust. Right. So make sure that whatever you build is robust and maintainable, at least from the drive base up. if you can drive, you're probably playing, right? And so good bumpers, good draft train. So don't stretch that draft train unless you know what you're doing.
Mhm.
And so but the other thing that they're going to have to figure out is no practice. You can't just show up and fix it. So reach out. Here's another thing I'd like everybody to know, include Georgia as well. Please ask for help before the event. Call me. I will help you if I can. I'll drive to your shop. But we will get you running before you show. I mean, I will help you at an event. Don't worry about that. I'll help you when you get there. But the time constraints being what they are, please ask for help before your first event. And so these Slack channel networks are, I think, a vital part of that. The other thing, I think y'all gave some excellent advice on how to think through, the point system, and it's slightly different. So teams that may or may not have thought about competitions that way can now have a slightly different game. They think not a well, I want to call it a game. They have a slightly different way to think about their relationships with other teams. That's really the right way to think about it, right? So now we are a tighter community. Now I will miss playing in regionals with teams from the southeast. We got teams from New York come down, Canada, blah, blah. Yeah, I get that. I'll miss that, but that's not really what this is about. This is about all the teams, and this is about their ability to work with each other. Because I think together, this cooperation thing is no joke. We will help you. So I think the community would be stronger. I'd like to see that. The South Carolina teams benefit from that. So as we go forward here, I see lots of positives for us. Um, the few drawbacks of, maybe I don't play with the Tennessee teams that I used to play with and those kind of things in Florida, whatever. Yeah, whatever. That's just me. But I'm only one team out of all these teams.
Yeah, and then one of the interesting things that ends up happening is, at least in Georgia, um, things like Georgia has a like Destination Einstein, where they've gone out and have practice fields. There's one in
DE Thomas DE.
sorry,
Yeah.
Is it design and engineering, I think, or something like that? DE.
DE of there's like a DE field in Atlanta. There's that at the Johnson Research and the Lonnie Johnson Research and Development Center. There's a DE field that's hosted and ran by Walton Robotics at their high school. There's one in Columbus, I believe, or was at one point. I don't know if they've still got that one going. They are. There's one in Albany. These things just have sprung up. There's plans to add more. If South Carolina doesn't have those yet, that's something that will likely come as your district begins to grow.
That, or yeah, reach out and find any South Carolina teams that might have any more built out practice field.
Right. So yeah, we are working on that. I can't, because I'm not representing the committee on this call. But that is something that we are trying to consider. We've looked at how Georgia's done it. We've been very impressed by what you've done. And we want to replicate some things. And so we've got some surprise benefits here. And I think we can learn a lot from you. And our team has a practice field, and we will allow anybody to come to it. Just call us up, drive over, we'll help you build something.
Yeah. And as a thing, whenever you go districts, the quality of team, like the skill ceiling improves, but the skill floor has greatly improved. Even
right.
Take COVID into account of like how that impacted teams. The skill floor of this last year is leaps and bounds what the skill floor was when we just started districts. So you're going to see the team that maybe went to their one event, never drove, maybe drove for like 30 seconds, consistently every year. Now all of a sudden they're going to have the number of plays and where they're not having to just have that one event, where they're able to keep going to events, and then all of a sudden they have a big break year, and then all of a sudden they just take off. So that is definitely a thing. It's your team growth ends up being you end up getting more teams as you go into district models, because the likelihood of just being one and done isn't gone. So as a new team, you're able to justify forming one, because it's not just, okay, we're going to go to one event, we're going to get killed, and then we're going to go home and be done. You're
Yeah.
now able to go, okay, I'll be able to go to 2 events, maybe go to 3. If I do all right, I'm going to see all my, like, it's all the, instead of it being, oh, maybe we get 5, maybe 10 of the same teams at this regional because other teams came in. It's, you're going to see your same buddies at every event. You're going to, if you decide, like, it is very much a overall net positive for whatever perceived net negatives there are. It is just so much more beneficial for you to be in a district model than as opposed to not being in one.
Right.
I guess some other things to talk about on that front wound up being the like event selection process, that now instead of, as a South Carolina team, if you do want to choose a second event, that you have to travel to at least Tennessee or would probably been the next most proximal event to you guys. But so now you have, as a district team, you now have 7 events to choose from for this upcoming season, and I believe that process kicks off, I think, with first preference inputs starting. I forget if they get the start or get locked in on the 22nd of September, but definitely keep your eyes on that when that does open up. But just as a quick walkthrough of the events we have week 1 in Albany, Georgia. We have 2 week 2 events, one in Dalton, Georgia, one in Anderson, South Carolina. 1 week 3 event in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Brian, you got an event in your backyard over there. 2 week 4 events for Carrollton, Georgia, and Hartsville, South Carolina, and a 1 week 5 event in Macon, Georgia. So you get those 7 events to choose from, which is an awesome spread. I think I'd hope to see some, teams traveling back and forth, but either based on an event being closer, maybe a Georgia team's closer to a South Carolina event. It's just more convenient to go to, but it's also an awesome opportunity to meet some new teams and compete with some new teams. But Brian, I think you had some tips and pointers on how teams might go about setting their preferencing for that event selection process.
Right. So when you make your first selection, you can say, here's the events I want to go to, ranked in order, right? And you'll get the first one if you can, and go down the list. Because you want to look at spacing sometimes, you might not know, if you don't get your first event, that maybe less hypothetically, I want to go 2-4, right? So if I go 2-4 and I don't get 2, well, I don't want to go 3-4. I don't want to go 4-5. So I can go 1-4, but you might not like 1-4 because those are 2 long drives. Maybe you want 3-5, right? But if you're not really sure, it's better to put just your first pick in. Don't get a backup one. And then next round, put in your next pick that you really want. And then after they do that, you can then, after those 2 rounds are over with, you can then do your pick for the next one to get the 2 that you want, right? So a lot of that comes into play, especially if if some of the events are filling up. And so you're like, well, for example, Lawrenceville in week 3, there's 40 teams are going to fill there, right? Are going to want to go there. Well, maybe Walton's going to go over to Dalton, right? So the west side of Atlanta might go to Dalton, right? But there's that event is likely going to come close to filling up the first round. It's going to fill up in the second round. And so depending on what your option is, if you take a second event, if it's not a clear-cut decision, I would just pick the first one, and then after you get your decision from the first one, then come up with a choice for your 2 events starting for the second selection. But for us, there's some clear-cut events we're going to go to. Some of the options that we go to right now are, going over to South Carolina, right? So for South Carolina, you may not have as many options because there's just, I think there's 2 or 3 in there. There's not a lot of options, right? So it may be a little simpler, but as we start growing and through more events or the events start changing around, there are times when you want to just put one in and figure out what that is, and then make your decision for the second one. If you don't get it, then you can make a different decision, right?
Right,
And
right.
historically, if you're worried about events filling up, at least for Georgia, the vast majority of our teams are located around 3 key hubs. Um, it's the Atlanta hub, which most
Mhm.
of our teams are, and then there's a hub around Albany, and then there's a hub around Columbus. So
Mm.
typically,
Wow.
Dalton.
They,
yeah,
they,
and then
they,
Dalton.
there's one adult
There's
Columbus.
one team at Dalton?
There's two
There's 3
teams
or
in
4.
Dalton.
Okay.
With Dalton, the Dalton Catabots, and then 5900, the Fighting Mongooses, and there end up being a couple also
Yeah,
there that are in the area of.
yeah.
So typically, the closest event to Atlanta is going to fill up fast. Um,
Right.
so that and Georgia teams really like to compete in week 1 and week 2. So those events end up filling up first. Of like in those 3 events, typically end up filling up first of like the week 1 event, the week 2 event,
Yeah.
and then the closest Atlanta event.
Right. And part of that is if you do 3 and you've already chosen you don't want to do 1 and 2, then you're doing 3, 5, and 6, right?
Right.
And they may not want to do a 5, 6 back-to-back weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that type of thing does get taken into account. Typically, the events that have had the least people in Georgia, Albany consistently for a lot of teams, that's a long drive. I know
Yeah.
making it myself last year, it was a very, very long drive coming from the
Mhm.
Kennesaw area. So they end up having to ask extra teams to sign up for that event sometimes. Um, just looking at where the other 2 South Carolina events are, I believe the
Mhm.
week 2 one ends up being a reasonable drive for some Georgia teams.
Right.
But the other, I believe it's the week 5 one. I don't have this in front of me.
Well,
Week 4.
it's week
Scroll down
4.
on the notes.
That's in the
Thomas.
northeast part of the state.
The week 4 where it's more towards the central part of the state, that
Mhm.
one is probably going to be in a similar situation as to Albany. So
Right.
as you're looking at
Agree.
this, and also the less teams there are, the less likely a team that is going to be a powerhouse is going to be there. So it's going to be easier to get district points. So you also like that's another layer of when you're selecting these is when you select your second one, you'll have a list of teams that have registered for every event as their
Mhm.
first event. You can look at it and you can kind of go, okay, I know these teams are probably going to go here because this is where they like to go, and these teams are going to go here where this is where they like to go. I don't want to play them again because they're just going to cream me. I'm
Right?
going to go to
Yep.
states. I'm going to go
Yep.
someplace
No,
else.
Yep.
it's an
So
opportunity to excel.
yeah, so there is it's a game within a game within a game within a
Yeah.
game. Like
Uh,
everything, every little bit matters.
Take it as a challenge.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's from the South Carolina side. So Anderson, right? Anderson week 2 is essentially the Electric City District that was the Electric City Regional last year. Same venue. Should work out very well for us. It's opposite of Dalton, kind of within driving distance of either. So Georgia, please come on up.
So
Drop Dalton. Come on up and see us.
if there
Because I want to see some blending.
I'll say this: if there wasn't a Gwinnett or a Lawrenceville event,
Hmm?
I believe Anderson would be our closest event. So
Come on over anyway.
now, I'm not doing 2 and 3.
Okay, all right, fair enough. But
that is
since Lawrenceville is going to fill up, you're not going to be there anyway. So come on up to Anderson and visit us because that's where we will be. And then my team wants to pick a Georgia event because I want to play in Georgia before I just try to waltz into a district championship and go, who are you?
another thing that you should take into account is you want to have your first event at an event where a good bit of teams it's going to be their first event.
Oh yeah.
every year there's a couple teams that do the first event week 3, and then they're first event week 4, where then you're coming into teams where I've already been to one event, so you're trying to start
Right.
walking when teams are already just hurtling down at like Mach 10. So you do want to try. When I said Georgia teams like to be week 1, week 2, sometimes even week 3, because week 3 has typically been Columbus, of where the Columbus group, the Columbus hub, all had their first event. You want to have your first event at a similar time as to other teams to prevent you from just getting pile drived into oblivion in your first event and then having to like really recover by your second one.
Good. Sweet. Do y'all have any
Good job.
questions of the Georgia side about South Carolina in general that I could maybe help with?
Specifically, what are some teams to look out for? I know we all generally know, and we can do this the back way too. We know who to like look at and watch for. And if I'm being frank, the only South Carolina team I know is 1102, who was a Georgia team for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So just who are some, not necessarily heavy hitters, but people to watch out for in the South Carolina district or the South Carolina state.
So there's one
yeah,
team I know that like since 2016's got 3 regional wins. You might know them.
I might. I think we actually have 4 now. But so 44-51, my team. We will try to be competitive.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. And so the pointers about the district point system, how to think that way was very helpful to me. Right. So we're gonna try our best. And we try to bring a game. Now, I'd like to maybe let me highlight a couple teams to make sure that Georgia understands what they're getting here. So let's start with original and sustaining. So we will now be bringing the 3 oldest teams in the Peachtree District. Sorry,
Oscar.
Sorry, Oscar. Now you've got Team 281, the Green Villains from Greenville, South Carolina. They started in 1999. Party like it's 1999. So they're out there and they've been around that long, and so they have a lot of experience and they build very robust robots. No doubt about that. Then the next year in 2000, we have 2 teams. Team 342, the Burning Magnetos out of North Charleston, and then Team 343, Metal in Motion out of Seneca. 2 very storied programs. Again, very robust robot builders, very experienced teams. So those are the 3 teams I'd really like to highlight for this particular call, and we can get into a little more specifics as we get closer to actual districts. And maybe I can give you some insider tips about some other things, but those are the 3 teams I'd like to highlight for now.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to play with 343 on my first year with 1746 at the Peachtree Regional. They actually came over and we got to play on alliance with them. It ended quickly in the quarterfinals, but it was fun anyway.
Yeah. They come to play.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. So so those are the ones I wanted to highlight tonight.
Yeah, I think as we either a later episode before kickoff or when we start getting closer to our first competition, I think a get to know you kind of like session, right? Because it's actually easier for South Carolina to understand Georgia than Georgia to understand South Carolina, because we're actually ranked, right? We got district rankings.
There you are.
It's like, hey, they've been in the top 20 every time.
Right. So let's start there and go down the list, right?
Right.
Which I've already done, by the way.
See, you'll get the district point gain then. I think there's a lot of unknown that Georgia would like to hear. That it's gonna take some time to go through it, right? It's not gonna be a 10-minute discussion. There's probably the top third of Georgia and South Carolina and just talk about them because there are going to be a lot of similarities.
speaking of some opportunities to get to know each other, we'll move on to some notes here for some PCH news. Well, I get PCH. Some opportunities to get to know people in person. We got some great opportunities for off-season events coming up for both Georgia and South Carolina. We have the SCREW event for South Carolina Robotics Invitational and Workshops, I believe is the acronym.
Yes, that's correct.
October 15th, which is the weekend before GRITS, which is the Georgia Robotics Invitational and Tournament Showcase. That is then happening the weekend of October 22nd and 23rd. So I believe registration is open for both of these events. So either search online for either of them or ask around and see if your team can get signed up for either of those events, because they wind up being great opportunities to start learning. I believe, David, you mentioned that you were already signed up for GRITS.
That's correct.
So big fan of doing your homework.
If you're a big fan of Southern style breakfast food, GRITS is
Oh,
known
yeah.
to be giving out actual things of GRITS as awards at GRITS.
Oh, awesome.
So if you need any more incentive, you can get a breakfast out of going to GRITS.
Right. So I will want to shout out to one of Georgia First sponsors, Automation Direct. They make the awards for GRITS, and they are some really, really cool awards.
Yeah, they're some of the coolest awards in all of
Yeah.
First, and I've been around long enough to be able to say that. So,
Yeah,
but
they had, like, in 2018, the award was a scale, and you could actively play the game on your trophy because it had a little screen on a little touch screen on the bottom. So you could add cubes to one end, and it would teeter-totter, and then you'd get points comparable to a 2018 game. I know in 2017 or 2016, the award was a portcullis. You'd press a button, portcullis would go up. Press a button, portcullis will go down.
What?
2017, it was a little gear that went round and round and round while two went up or down.
Oh, that was beautiful.
My team personally, I got the 2016 and 2017 trophies,
Wow.
so we were really proud of those.
Wow. We've got to up
yeah.
our
winning the event is
gotta
one
up our
thing.
award
Getting the
game.
trophy, though,
That is so much cooler.
But another props to Automation Direct on that front is they wind up having high school interns over the summer that typically their prep project is then designing the award.
That is
So
that is
if
terrific.
I remember correctly, I think one of our current team members winds up having had a hand in designing this year's trophy. Not that I've seen it, but I've heard good things.
We don't get to see it. Like, I remember a good friend of mine interned at Automation Direct the 2 years, and he's like, "Yeah, my job is pretty much just the trophy for this entire summer." So it ends up being pretty cool.
Yeah.
Moving on to another opportunity for teams to get to know each other or do some networking, skill building, as the Georgia First is hosting their usual robotics symposium over at Kennesaw State University in Marietta, Georgia. We're excited to be heading back that direction. We'll have to work on getting some of our own team members signed up to head over or perhaps present on some interesting topics. So I don't know if there are any comparable opportunities in South Carolina, but again, it's a great opportunity to get out and meet some other teams and share some good ideas.
Yes. So for South Carolina, the South Carolina Robotics Invitational and Workshops, right? So there's workshops at that event. I don't believe there's GRITS has workshops at it, right? Y'all do the symposium instead.
Correct. Yep.
So typically South Carolina, we do the SCREW competition will have workshops, and we do workshops at the kickoff site.
Oh, gotcha.
Do y'all do equivalent kickoff workshops?
Yeah, usually at the Atlanta-based kickoff event, they'll wind up having after the kickoff winds up happening, they'll have some workshops to host afterwards.
We typically do workshops before the video, right? And then after the video, we might host.
Yeah, the excitement level.
A quick build for a drive base, the bot drive base, that kind of thing.
Yeah. On that note, I think that's another. I forget when exactly that deadline winds up coming out, but if you have any interest in I think teams are automatically opted into it for getting the kitbot drivetrain. But make sure you're keeping an eye on that for your main mentor contacts in the first system to either opt in or opt out of that kitbot drivetrain that is offered as some other general note of advice. Brian, see for this next note here, if you have some particularly interesting or local, perhaps,
Yes.
news to share.
So I know there are some teams in the Gwinnett area near Lawrenceville, where I'm at, that already know about this. But there is going to be a new DE opening up in Gwinnett County. It's going to be basically right near Sugarloaf Mills. So it's off 85. And so it's not ready now. They are still going to be working on the field. And so the plan is it should be open before kickoff. So I know I will really love that, because that DE is going to be 2 miles from my house.
And I believe this means you have to spend less time out in the driveway tuning a limelight to sunny conditions.
So that's we found that we're a community team. Right now we're working out of a mentor's house, and so it turns out you can't really use your limelight during the day, and if we then now have color targets to sort of fake it, right, instead of doing retroflective tape. We thought that would work, but then it turns out all the beam breaks get flooded by IR from the sun, and so the robot thinks there's no balls in the robot because all the sunlight. So yes, so the DE will be great. I know they're for a lot of the east side teams, it could be really a huge benefit. Gwinnett, it's going to be put together by Gwinnett County Schools, and so there's details of how that gets managed to have to be worked out. It will be open to all teams, right? So it's not going to be, you have to be a Gwinnett County school team to go there. Currently, our closest drive is basically about a 45-minute usually to go to DE. So Gwinnett County Schools is a certified first district, and the number of teams, FRC teams, has grown. I think we're up to like 6 or 7. Maybe 8. We got 21 high schools. So anyway, it's growing there. The DE, I think, is going to be even a bigger impact to help grow more FRC teams in our school system too. So
yeah,
really looking forward.
Awesome work, and a huge shout out to anybody who's had a hand in getting that together. So
yes,
awesome to see the district grow.
Yes, I don't know who's behind it, but I think I know who's behind it, and so thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, we get to do a bit of the announcing, but by no means do we take any of the credit for it.
Oh yeah, no.
I take all the credit. It was me.
Yes. So yeah, that's going to be a huge benefit. I would say this: the teams that did the best in the district were strongly correlate to how much time they were at a DE.
Right.
All right. One other piece of news here, not news, but just general reminder is if you have any mentors that you'd like to get connected to, or if you're a mentor that's out there and looking for additional resources or a network to help support you in your mentoring journey, we do have something called the PCH Mentor Roundtable that we wind up running for any mentors in the district. It's been exciting to onboard all of our new South Carolina mentors. But if you're at all interested, either comment on this video or try to get in touch with a mentor who might already be part of that network. But ask around, and we'd love to get you added and share any resources we can with you.
And that is a Slack channel, so it's a mentor Slack. I really want to thank Kellen and Brandon King from Columbus Space Program. The two of them were one of the ones that sort of started something called a prototyping channel on there. The goal is for everybody to sort of go in there and say, hey, we found this out. And so there is some stuff with, I forget which, was it bumpers? Anyways, mechanisms 83, 70, 8736.
8736.
They were working on something like, well, did you think about this? Because I know we had that problem, right? And so it's a great way for mentors to share, help each other out, because yes, that's one thing that they get to learn. One piece of knowledge we are sharing all get better. But now the students can take that little piece of knowledge and try iterating and see, can I get this thing working better than, let's say, Otto's climb that we liked? Just saying.
Yeah.
You did pull that off better than we did, to be fair.
Yeah. And by no means are we saying you should share your secret sauce
Yes.
in that channel. But a little secret about secret sauce, because of how much you're going to be playing with other teams, expect and take pride in it being copied. Because
Yes.
if it can be copied,
Yep.
it will be copied.
Yep. In Georgia, when 1771 came to the DE, and I saw that, and I was like, that's illegal. They're like, no, it's not. Look right here, right? And then sure enough, as soon as that episode came out, and people saw that and they saw what they did their first competition, everybody's like, wait, I can do that
now too. Yeah.
So secret sauce doesn't last long.
Well, let me give you my secret sauce. Ask.
Yep.
That is the secret sauce. There's not like, oh, I got this mechanism. That's so cool. I mean, yeah, I do geek out about cool mechanisms, but the real secret sauce is ask somebody, and I'll bet you they'll tell you something.
And that's, I think, the coolest part about First Culture as long as I've been in the program, is that yes, it's a competition, but if I'm going to play against somebody, I want to play against them at their best.
At their best,
and
yes, exactly.
If I beat them, I want to have deserved to beat them, or that if they beat me, that they deserve to beat me. I think if we're competing against each other at our best, that it really grows everything we're trying to do here for giving students the right lessons to learn from, to build them as people as they move on to bigger and better things. That I think there's just so many awesome parts of this program to learn from.
So there's one thing I want to talk about, that secret sauce thing, and it's something that I had an aha moment on this past season, since we could do the longer break. And this is going to be new for the South Carolina teams. You're used to building by prototyping, seeing if it works, and then making it better, right? Those teams that have gone to 2 regionals have probably already learned this, right? But everybody else that has not, this will be new to them.
Right.
When you go to multiple events, there's very little time between there. And to say, I have an idea, I think I can get this to work, will probably take too much time in the short amount of time you have. And so you really do want to look at other teams and say, that's similar to mine, right? And, we would not have been successful as a team if we had not seen what Otto did for their client, right? I saw that, I'm like, that's just so much like ours. I don't know how they do it, right? But I can take this thing I know works and just try to spend my time making it work versus trying to see if this works in general.
Right.
Yeah, it was really cool pointing out to our students, like, hey, this other team, this idea we came up with through a lot of time and effort and boiling this thing down to the most simple thing possible. Well, this other team liked it enough that they put it on their robot too, that our students lit up and thought that was one of the cooler things to say, oh, that is awesome that they put that on their robot.
Another big thing in speaking towards their culture of, since being in a district, often when you win the event, or you advance out of quarterfinals to semifinals that first time or something like that, often the first team to walk up and congratulate you is the team that you just knocked out. I have in multiple situations where the team that I just beat, or when the team that just beat me, I'm walking over to my buddies, giving them a hug and saying, great job. It honestly just becomes a big family. A lot of the friends that I have now were on other teams from when I was in high school, and then we just still talk to each other, and we're mentors now. So you end up seeing all these people again and again and again and again. So it just ends up being a very big, fun, dysfunctional yet somehow happy family.
going to move towards wrapping things up here. Before we do that, any last piece of thought floating around in anybody's head, ideas, tips for the upcoming season?
I'm just looking forward to it. It's just, this is a new challenge for us in South Carolina, and I think a more of an opportunity than a challenge. I don't want to call it something like it's going to be difficult. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us to learn from what Georgia has learned over the last, 5 years or 6 years? And so we look forward to that, and I know you'll help us along that path. I'm just super stoked.
Yeah, like you said, ask.
Ask. Just ask. The only dumb question is the one you didn't ask.
I'm looking forward to the next several years, right? This first year, everybody's getting used to the whole new system, right? But as we've seen improvement in Georgia, we're going to see the same improvement in South Carolina. We've seen the emergence of more consistently competitive teams in Georgia that are top tier. I'm looking forward to seeing that grow, because it's just fun to have a very competitive, challenging environment locally that normally you only got to see when you went to Worlds.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, I'm generally looking forward to the mashup. I think exactly like Brian said, looking forward to seeing how this merge winds up, all the benefits it winds up causing over the next couple seasons, and seeing how teams catch on and take advantage of all those opportunities. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yep, I'm really excited. The extra world slots, really nice.
Wait, you're getting one of those? I don't think so.
Hopefully.
Yeah,
if
we called it, Brian.
You got dibs, huh? That's how this works.
You got dibs?
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully, if we can whip our students into shape, we'll get one of those. But yeah, I'm just really excited to meet some new friends. See some old ones. We get 1102 back finally.
Yeah.
You thought you could get away.
Yeah, the border hopper.
Turns out you really can't. So I look forward to meeting with and working with those guys again. Meeting with and working with a lot of new guys and gals again. So I look forward to seeing all of you guys at some point, at some place in the coming years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Lots of things to look forward to. To wrap things up, David, thanks so much for joining us and giving us a little bit of that South Carolina perspective. Hopefully we get expand to get some more South Carolina viewership for our show to pump up those view numbers.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to try to get some view numbers up here north of the border. That's a little odd for me. So again, thank you very much for extending this offer. Look forward to this opportunity and the continued opportunities.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, we'll go ahead and wrap up. We'll be back for some more future content, but until then, we're Peach Pit, and we're happy to have had your attention. But so long.
See ya.
So long.